Welcome to this video demonstration of the IconMason extension for Adobe Illustrator by atomiclotus.net. IconMason is a native palette in Adobe Illustrator that allows you to access much of the functionality of the IconJar archive utility for Macintosh. IconMason is compatible with both Macintosh and Windows, so whereas IconJar only works on Mac, IconMason works on both Mac and Windows. So to find out more about IconJar, go to geticonjar.com and learn more about the application, and you can purchase the app from the website as well. So what IconJar is an application that allows you to archive your icons into a custom file format, a .iconjar file format, which is a special kind of a folder on Macintosh called a package, and it stores your icons as well as metadata about the icons in a single file that you can then use to drag and drop icons into different applications like Adobe Illustrator, XD, Sketch, and Figma. So you can, with IconMason, you can open the IconJars, which means you can select an IconJar and it'll show you all of the different icons in this palette, which you can then drag and drop. So you don't have to drag and drop from the app, from a separate app. You can access them directly in Adobe Illustrator. Additionally, you can also edit the different, the metadata for the different icons. So I can click on an icon, click edit metadata, and it'll give me a pop-up that allows me to edit like the tags, the name, change icon, move it to a different icon set, and so forth. So let's close that out. Going across the top row here, we can also import IconJars, which means that for every icon in the IconJar, IconMason will create a new artboard, set the name of the artboard to the icon name, and then place the icon on the artboard. I'll demonstrate each one of these features in just a second, so I'm going to go through them first and explain them. And then export IconJar. If I open, once I've imported a folder or a IconJar of icons, if I have, say I'm an icon designer and I've set up my icons on artboards, I can export the icon, the entire document into IconJar format. I can also export into zip format, which is going to be handy with the Windows compatibility. So just a quick word about Windows compatibility. Like I mentioned before, the IconJar file format is a special kind of a file on Mac OS called a package. It's actually a folder that has a custom file extension that treats the folder of items like a file, which you can move around as a single entity. And they usually are associated with custom applications like IconJar. So in addition to allowing me to, but Windows does not support the package file format or folder format, so we had to add zip archive form support for Windows. You can still open an IconJar file on Windows, but it's not going to treat it as a file. It's actually going to treat it as a folder. So we added the zip format to allow you to easily move the entire archive around as a single entity if you want to. It's not required, but it's there as nice to have if you want it. Also with IconJar, you can also, IconMason, you can also import a folder of icons. So you're not limited to interacting with just IconJar files. You can open folders of icons, of SVG icons, a zip archive of icons, or an IconJar file. And should mention at this point too that IconMason only works with SVG icons. At this point, to be honest, there's no reason to continue using PNG icons. They're just not. It's just not a necessity because SVG file format is pretty ubiquitously supported at this point. So we only support SVG icons. So I'm only going to show you a few of the major features. I don't want to run through all of the features because this video would be quite long. You can learn more about all of the features at our website, iconmason.com, as well as in the documentation. which the recording of this video actually hasn't been written, but it'll be coming soon. So first I'm going to demonstrate opening an IconJar. So I'll just click on Open IconJar, and I'm going to select this diversity free pack here, which is fairly small, so it can demonstrate some of the different features without it taking a long time. So click open, and it's going to very quickly refresh the UI, and then you'll see all of my icons that are imported here. And then I can actually just drag and drop the icons into Adobe Illustrator on my canvas here. So it just imports the SVG icon from the IconJar archive. So I can delete that. I can also edit the metadata. I can edit all of these different icons. So if I want to open the icon, I can click open, and it will open the icon in a separate document. So I can edit it, save it, and it is updated live in my IconJar archive. So close that out, and going back to the different icons, so I can edit the metadata. So click edit metadata, and it allows me to change the file name, the tags, and different metadata, the license, and I can also move it to a different set. This archive only has one set, but if it had multiple sets, then I could move it to a new set. Which brings me to one of the next features. I can also add new sets here. So if I click on the little plus button here, I could add set number 2 and save, and it'll refresh the UI. And then if I look under here, I see set number 2. Now if I go back to my to edit my icon metadata, and I want to move it to that different set, I can do so. So that is opening and editing icons. I can also delete icons. If I want to add new icons, I can do so. So there's two different ways to add icons. I can add icons from the file system. So if I have an icon on the file system, I can select that icon and add it to the archive. I can also add an icon from the canvas itself. So let's take, just for demonstration purpose, I'll grab my Mason logo here. And if I right click on any of this grid here and then click add selection, it's actually going to copy that to a new document, save it as an icon, and then it'll refresh the UI, and voila, you have the artwork from the artboard here from the canvas added as an icon to my IconJar. So that's all I'm going to demonstrate for editing icon files and opening IconJar. So the next feature that I'll demonstrate is actually this import feature. And what import does, as I mentioned before, is allows you to select an IconJar folder or IconJar archive and import each one of the icons to a separate artboard in Adobe Illustrator, and it'll set the name of the artboard to the IconJar file. So I'm going to click import. It'll ask me for confirmation that I want to import, and it will create a new document with an artboard for each one of the icons that's in my archive here, in my image grid, and it's going to place each one of those icons onto a artboard, and then it'll save the file for me automatically. And so this is useful if I've got an IconJar, but I want to send it as a single Adobe Illustrator file to a customer or share it with someone, or even for my own purposes. The thing to keep in mind here is that Adobe Illustrator does have a limit of 1,000 artboards per document. So if your IconJar is more than 1,000 icons, it's not going to be able to import the entire thing at this point. When we release the next version of Icon Mason, will actually add the ability to break sets that are larger than 1,000 icons over multiple documents. But at this time, we are stuck with the hard limit of 1,000 artboards. Honestly, if you're working with archives that are more than 1,000 files, you will see some performance issues. It's just a practical limitation of the application of Adobe Illustrator, not of Icon Mason. So that is open IconJar and import IconJar. The next feature is that I'll show you, and this will be the last one. But the excuse me, export IconJar. So if I have a file open with different icons on separate artboards, like the one that we just created, I can click export, and it's going to ask me for a name. So I will just call this export demo. Export demo. I can select the location where I want to save this. I'm going to save it back into the folder where we opened the original one from, and then I can click export, and it's actually going to export all of those icons pretty quickly into an IconJar. And then if I click yes to this dialog, it'll open my newly exported IconJar archive in the IconJar application if you have it installed. And of course, if you're on Windows, that's not going to work because IconJar is only compatible with Mac OS at this point. So that is it for this quick demonstration of the Icon Mason extension for Adobe Illustrator. Please check out IconJar at geticonjar.com or IconMason at iconmason.com. Thank you.